But in the meantime, something that we've touched on, but we haven't paid close attention to, is the order. I'm trying to keep our eyes on the order as we go through. The order of the avodah as it was done in the Beit HaMikdash on a daily basis, which is significant. So I've been pointing it out. I've been highlighting it here, I think, to some degree as we go through. What I haven't been pointing out is that what we're learning here in Masechet Tamid doesn't exactly jibe with the Mishnah that we learned in Yoma. So this is one of the issues that comes up in this Gemara. It brings up a lot of interesting things. One of the reasons that I'm interested in it right now is because last time we were looking at the end of the chapter about lighting the menorah and bringing the Ketoret. I just realized I didn't bring up the right. Looking at the right thing. Hold on a second. How come I don't have it? Tell me something. Did it from chapter 3? Did I send everybody the entire chapter of chapter 3? I have a feeling that
including Ted, Ken. So including the last Mishnah is Ted, no? That's not one.
The last Mishnah is Ted, but how many pages do you have? Do you have 6 pages or do you have 4 pages?
So a copy from Sefaria and from Al Torah, so I'm not sure. Please.
Oh, you're not using my sheets. Does anybody have the sheets? The sheets that I get, that's okay. The sheets that I sent you, does anybody have them? I have a feeling that I didn't send everything to you. I'm sorry. I just realized that now. What?
Need to excavate and see. I honestly don't recall offhand.
So
I don't recall whether I have 4 or 6 pages. I'll have to go and check.
I feel like I should send this to you now, or else you can just, you can follow along on the screen.
I'm happy following on the screen.
Okay, let's just follow on the screen for now, so I don't take any more time. Okay, one of the issues that's come up is how the Dishun HaMenorah and the lighting of the menorah, how exactly that took place, and what were the logistics of that. What we talked about last time, we started the Bartanura. I think we'll just have to start it again. The Bartanura started to explain that the menorah, of course, has 7 branches, and based on the idea that the menorah is placed parallel to the southern wall of the Hechal. So it means that it's pointing from east to west. So just again, to situate ourselves, if you walk into the Hechal and you turn to your left, you would see all the 7 branches in front of you, and they would be all parallel to the southern wall. So the Mishnah talks about Shnei Nerot Mizrachiyim. So let's look at this again from the beginning of Mishnah Tet. Misha Zacha B'Dishun Mizbeach HaPnimi, the one who won the lottery for cleaning the inner Mizbeach, which is the Mizbeach for the Ketoret, goes in, Nichnas V'Natal HaTeni V'Yinicho L'Panav. He goes in, he takes the basket, and he places it in front of him. And then he would grab by handfuls and the ash that was on the Mizbeach HaKtoret and put it into the teni. And at the end, he would like sweep the rest of it into it and place it, put it down, and he would go out. He would leave the Heichal. The one who won the lottery to clean the menorah, Nichnas u'matza shnei meirot mizrachim dolkim, midashen et hashar meiniach edelo dolkim bimkoman. So this person, what he does depends on what he finds present when he sees the menorah. If he goes in and he finds that the two easternmost lights are lit, then he cleans out the ash from the others, and he leaves these ones burning in their place. If he found that the two easternmost lights had gone out, then midashnan umadlikan min hadokim, he cleans those out and he lights them from the lights that are still lit. And afterwards he will clean out the rest. So what do you see? What's the main thing that he has to do no matter what when he cleans the menorah at this point?
Leave lamps burning.
But in terms of the dishun, like what does he have to do? What does he have to do dishun for? What does he have to clean?
He cleans the individual lamps. So he starts with whatever ones are not lit, and proceeds to, and
Which
then
ones does he have to clean now, no matter what? And in any case, no matter which scenario, which ones does he always clean?
the westernmost.
And how many are there?
4.
Why do you say 4?
Oh, 5. Excuse me, 5. That's my poor arithmetic there.
Right. The point is that if he finds the easternmost lights lit, so then they're lit. He doesn't have to do anything to them, and then he can do the main thing that he has to do right then, which is the dishun of the menorah, of the other 5 branches of the menorah, which are the westernmost. But if the 2 easternmost ones are out, so he has to make sure that those are lit. You notice, right? Nitzan shekavu midashnan madlikan min adokim yachar kach midashen et hashar. Right. So either way, he has to do the 5. Okay. There was a stone in front of the menorah, and it had 3 steps. That the Kohen would stand on this stone that had 3 steps, and he would fix the lights. And then he would put the kuz, which we described last week, which is a kind of a jar that he would use for taking out the ash and the old wicks from the menorah. He would put it on the 2nd step, and he would go out. So that's the end of the Mishnah. So let's look. Yeah, I see now. I didn't finish. The reason you didn't get the rest of the pages because I see I didn't finish formatting them the way I usually do. But that's okay. We'll just press ahead. Okay, so Misha Zachabidishun Mishnah Hapnimi Nichas Lemsalatem Miniach Yado, and so forth. Uvachona Kiberet Ashar. Right, so the person is cleaning the Mizbeach of the Ktoret. First, he takes everything out with his hands, And then at the end, Shelo haya rak ma'at deshen, at the end, when there's only a little bit of the deshen left, Lo haya yachol likach b'chofnav. It wasn't enough to like bring in his whole handful. He bade shar deshen l'toch hateni. Then he would sweep out the rest of the deshen into the basket. And he would leave the basket, he would leave the basket there at V'yatsa, and he'd go out. Avamiyad, lo hayamot shio, but he didn't take the teni out immediately. Shekevan shetzarich latet hadeshen etzal mizbeach kedma, kamodishun hamnorah, since he has to put the deshen that he now has cleaned off of the mizbeach haktoret, he has to take that and put it next to the mizbeach outside, the big mizbeach, to the east of it, just like will be done with the Dishun HaMenorah, that the deshen that's taken from the Menorah is also going to be put there. He's going to wait until after the blood has been thrown onto the Mizbeach from the Korban Tamid. Because that the person is going to do the Menorah, he's going to clean 2 nerot, the gomer hashamat dishun hamnorah, and then he's going to finish cleaning the rest. Together.
Yeah. I lost you.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold. Just a second. Oof. Can you hear me? No.
Yeah.
Yes? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, now you do. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, let's continue. Okay. So now we're up to the part where the Bartenu is going to explain more about the menorah. So if he came in and he found the 2 easternmost lights that they were burning, Haitana Savar Menorah Mizrach Ma'arav Himunacha. So this Tana holds that the menorah was placed from east to west. Sometimes you would find the rest of the lights of the menorah burning. And the Mishnah takes the example of the 2 easternmost lights being lit. Mishum deshar nerot afilu dokim mechaban umdashnan, because the other lights, even if they are lit, he's going to put them out and clean them. So that's something that's implied in the Mishnah. That's why I asked you, what does he always do? No matter what, he's going to clean the 5 westernmost lights. And these 2 eastern ones, if he finds the 2 eastern lights lit, he doesn't put them out. Because also it says right later on in Mishnah, right, in the case that he finds that the 2 easternmost ones have gone out, he's going to relight them. Right? The other ones, if they've gone out, he's not going to be relit again until the evening. So, so if he finds the 2 eastern ones that are lit, so he's going to clean the rest of them. The 5 lamps that are on the western side.
Mesir mehem hashemen hayashan v'aptila yishana. He's going to remove the old oil. In other words, this is the whole process of the dishun. On the Mizbeach HaKtoret, the dishun Mizbeach HaKtoret was a matter of just grabbing the ashes, because what's being burnt there is just the Ktoret. So the only thing you'll have left is ash. Here you have the possibility of having excess oil, and you have the wicks, and you have whatever ash might be there. So he's going to Meisir Mehen Hashem and Hayashan. He's going to take away the old oil, Baptila Hayashana, the old wick, Vihadeshen, and the ash. V'noten hakol bekuz. He'll put all of that into this kuz. V'noten shemen chadash. Then he'll put new oil, uftila chadasha, and a new wick. V'lechar shchitat tamid uzrikat damo. After the korban tamid is shechted and its blood has been thrown onto the mizbeach, b'dashen hashnei mizrachiot, then he's going to clean out the two eastern ones, and that's when he will put into them new oil and a new wick. And so you might ask, why does he divide the cleaning of the branches of the menorah into this combination of first 5, and then he waits, and then he does 2? You might wonder, right? Mishum dichtiv baboker baboker, because it says in the morning, behetivo et hanerot, amra Torah chalek ha'atava l'shnei b'karim. The Torah means to say that you have to divide the cleaning of the menorah into 2 mornings. So you divide the morning, the first part and the second part. So he's going to do the 5 westernmost ones first. And afterwards he'll do the 2 lights. Mishum dechevan da'atchil avid ruba. Because once he's beginning, he's going to do the majority. He'll do most. Avid shita. So, now that I said that you should start and you should do most of them at once, so why not really do the majority and do 6? So the reason, right, that which he does not do 6 and then do 1, mishum dichti behetivo et hanerot. The pasuk says that this is what he does when he's cleaning the nerot. So nerot is plural. Just a second. It's, hold on. I should have had this before. Shmot Lamed. The pasuk. So the pasuk is here in Shmot. This is in the end of Tetzaveh. Va'alot Aaron et haneirot ben ha'arbaim. Wait, before that. Here. It's talking to begin with here about the Mizbeach HaZahav, right? The Mizbeach HaZahav is the last of the Kelim that's mentioned, and it's mentioned after the Bigdei Kunar mentioned and so forth. So it says, "Vasita mizbeach miktar ktor datzei shitim taseoto." You're going to make an altar for bringing the ketoret. It's going to be made of acacia wood. Amar klovi, amar achbo, ravuya, 200 komatom, imena karnotav. It gives its dimensions. V'tzipito to zahav tahor, you're going to cover it with pure gold, et gagov, et kirotav saviv, et karnotav, v'asito lo zer zahav saviv, v'shtei tabot zahav taselo, make 2 golden rings on it, mitachad l'zero, underneath the zer, the sort of crown that goes around it, al shtei tzalotav, on its 2 sides, tasel shnei tzidav, vayu levatim levadim, vasedoto behema. So it's going to have these rods that you're going to use for carrying it. V'asita tabadim atzei shitim, v'tzipito tam zahav, v'natata oto lifnei aparochet asher aron ha'idut, lifnei ha'kaparat asher ha'idut, asher yiva'ed lecha shama. You place it in front of the parochet, right? The parochet is the sort of the drape that separates between the kodesh and the kodesh hakodeshim. That's asher al aron ha'idut. That's on or in front of the aron, the ark. Bifnei ha'kaparat asher ha'idut asher yiva'ed lecha shama. Okay, so it's going to be essentially opposite the aron, but it's going to be separated by the parochet. So here it says, "V'iktir alav aron ketoret samim baboker baboker v'heitivo atanerot yaktirena." So Aaron is going to burn on it the incense baboker baboker. So we'll say the pshat would be every morning. V'heitivo atanerot yaktirena. When he cleans the nerot, he will burn it. And when Aaron brings up the light, in other words, he lights the lights at Ben Ha'arbaim at the end of the day, yaktirena, he will burn the incense. Torah Tamid lifnei Hashem l'dorotechem. So these 2 psukim, what we see, they intertwine the burning of the incense and the lighting of the menorah. So this is the baboker baboker. So baboker baboker behetivot anerot yaktirena. So what's happening baboker baboker? He's going to be burning the ketoret when he is cleaning the nerot. So we see in Tamid is that, in fact, those are things that are going to be done by 2 different kohanim. And the baboker indicates that this heitivo atanerot, in other words, the iktir alav aron ketoret samim, baboker. So what is happening baboker? Does that refer back to hiktir, to the haktarata ketoret, or does it refer to the cleaning of the nerot? Or maybe it refers to both, that they're supposed to be done simultaneously.
And related to the korbanot hatamid also.
Well, in this pasuk, do we see that it's related to the korban tamid?
Yeah, but
Also,
it's related to the korban hatamid also.
okay, so well, I'm going with
Sorry.
in the Mishnah. We understand
are in parallelism, so outside of the on the Mizbeach HaNechoshet, because that is the reason for interruption between the 2 parts of cleaning the nerot.
Well, is it the reason that
Not the reason, but not the reason, but they're waiting and hearing, and after finish of Shechita and Zerika, they finished the cleaning of the 2 Shtei Norot, the easternmost.
Okay.
I was I want only to emphasize that there are three actions interwoven.
No, but here's the thing. I for the moment, I just want to see what we're understanding from this pasuk to understand what we said earlier in the Mishnah in Mishnah Zayin earlier in the parak. What we said was lo haya shochet hashochet ad sheshomea kol shar hagadol sheniftach. So if you remember this in Mishnah Zayin, who's coming to go into the Heichal? It's these two people who are going to go in to respectively clear the Mizbeach HaKtoret and the Menorah. So they go through this process of opening up the door, right? Where they go through the Pishpeish and they have to open up the door in a special way, and then they open the Sha'ar, and then Lo haya shochet hashochet ad sheshomea kol shar hagadol sheniftach. So the Kohen is going to shech the Korban Tamid. He's waiting to hear that they're going in. So we know what it implies, of course, is that once they're going in, he's already going to do the shechita. And while they're cleaning the Ketoret and the Mizbeach HaKtoret and the Menorah, they're going to be doing all the things that have to do with getting the Korban Tamid ready to bring on the Mizbeach and to sprinkle the blood. So what you're saying is true, but what I'm pointing out is that just from the pasuk, this pasuk doesn't yet reference this idea that this has to happen at the same time as the Korban Tamid. And we'll get to that eventually. We'll get to it eventually. Rashi says, wait a second. Rashi says, "Viktir lava aron ktoret samin baboker lashon nikui habesichlim shel menorah min dashen haptilot shenisrefu balayla vayam metivan bechol boker boker." Right. So hetivo, it's a language that implies cleaning out the bazichim, these sort of cups that were the holders for the oil of the menorah. He cleaned them out of their deshen and the ash and the wick that had burnt overnight, and he cleans them up each and every morning. So Rashi just takes a kipshuto baboker babot, right? B'chol boker uboker. That's baboker baboker. So I also just want to point out, in Pasuk Zayin, it doesn't say that the menorah gets lit. It just says that it gets cleaned. It does say that the Ketoret gets burnt, but it doesn't say that you light the candles in the morning. But it does say that you light the candles at the evening. Uvalot Aaron et haneirot bein ha'arbaim yaktirena. When Aaron lights the candles bein ha'arbaim, then the Ketoret will also be burnt. Ketoret tamid lifnei Hashem dorotechem. Ketoret will always be there before Hashem. This is an important point because this gets into different opinions about exactly what happened with the menorah in the morning. And there's less controversy in the evening, but in the morning it's not entirely clear. So that's the baboker. And the Bartanura is telling us that the reason for dividing the cleaning of the menorah into two parts, into 5 and 2, is to recognize this baboker behetivo. In the morning when the menorah is being cleaned. So it means you divide into 2 mornings, as it were. So you do part of it in one part of the morning and part of it in the other part of the morning. So, and then he points out, so why do we do 5 and 2 and not 6 and 1? Because it says behetivo at haneirot, when he's cleaning the neirot, which is plural, Ein hatavat neirot pachot mishtayim. So you can't have the cleaning of lights less than 2, right? It's the minimum plural. V'hanei mili bizman she'ein hanes. And this is all during the time when there wasn't a miracle. Kagon lachar shemed Shimon HaTzadik. Meaning, or for example, after the time of Shimon HaTzadik's death, אבל קודם שמת שמעון הצדיק, שהיה נר מערבי דולק תמיד בדרך נס, but before the Shimon HaTzadik died, when the ner ma'aravi was always lit by way of miracle, and according to this opinion, which is the ner ma'aravi, according to the way the Bartanur is learning, which is the ner ma'aravi?
Second of the easternmost lamps.
Right, it's the second from the east. It's right, so it's not the westernmost. It's just it's less east.
Yeah.
East than the most eastern, right? It's the second one, so it's the western one. Kedetanya michutz parochet ha'idut, like we learn in a Braita, outside of the parochet ha'idut, that's the pasuk we just saw. Edut hu shashchina shora b'Yisrael. What's parochet ha'idut? It's the testimony that it gives testimony that the divine presence resides in Israel. Zon ner ma'aravi. So what is in fact the Shekhinah? What's the sign of the Shekhinah? Zon ner ma'aravi shenoten b'shemen k'midat chevrotah. This refers to the Western light that you put in the same amount of oil as its fellow lamps. And you would start lighting from that lamp, from the Western one, and that would also be the last one. Right, it would be the first and the last. When he would come to clean out the 2 easternmost lights, he would then only clean the easternmost one. He would leave the second one, in other words, the ner ma'aravi, dolek. Ad ha'erev, he would leave that burning until the evening. Shemadlik et hanerot, in the evening when he goes to light the all of the candles. Umimenu madlik kol hanerot acherim, and he would light all the other ones from the ner ma'aravi. V'char shidlik shar hanerot, after all the other ones would be lit, Metivo, then he would clean it, umidashno, and take out the ash. L'ner zeh ba'erev, to this, right, he would take out the ash from this ner ma'aravi in the evening, and then he would light it. So all the other lights were lit from it. It would be the last one to therefore be cleaned, and then it would be lit. The afal gav dichtiv, and even though it says, right, even though just a moment ago I told you that when you clean any of the lamps of the menorah, you have to clean at least 2, right? Since it says behetivo et hanerot, dein hatavot pachot mishtayim, you have to have at least 2. Hachi adif tfei, but nonetheless, the way I just described it, that's preferable. Shelo lehetiv ki im ner echad min hashtei nerot mizrachiyot. In that circumstance, it's preferable to only clean one of the 2 eastern lights, uhaniach haner hasheni dolek, and to leave the second one, the ner ma'aravi, to leave that one lit, shelo lehetivo ad ha'erev, and not to clean it until the evening. Why? Kedei lefarsem hanes, Shehu dolek tamid, in order to publicize the miracle that it was always lit. So there's an exception to this idea of hetivon et hanerot, and the exception is when there's a miracle, then you don't take away from the miracle by putting out the Ner Ma'aravi in order to clean it. Rather, you let it burn the whole time. Right? So basically, the Ner Ma'aravi, up till the end of the Shimon HaTzaddik's life, it would burn for 24 hours. מה שמיטיב 5 של צד מערב תחילה ולא 5 לצד מזרח ולבסוף 2 של מערב. Okay, so the choice that was made to clean the 5 that are westernmost and then to do the 2 easternmost and not the other way around. ולא 5 לצד מזרח. Why doesn't he start with the 5 that are easternmost and then do the 2 that are westernmost, mehem hayat lo lahadlik, and then he could have lit from there. He doesn't do like that because it says lahalot ner tamid michutz laparochat ha'idut yaroch oto lifnei Hashem. Let's look at that pasuk for a minute. Okay, so here we have the discussion about, another discussion about the menorah, and here it starts off with the shemen. Vayidaber Shem el Moshe lemor, Tzavet b'nei Yisrael v'yiklu elecha shemen zayit zach, katit la'ma'or la'alot ner tamid. Michutz ha'parochat ha'idut, ba'ohel moed, yaroch oto Aaron, me'erev ad boker lifnei Hashem tamid, so outside of the Parochat Ha'idut, in the Ohel Moed, Aaron is going to arrange the lights of the menorah from the evening until the morning, before Hashem always. Chukat Olam Medorotechem. Al HaMenorah HaTorah Yaroch Et HaNerot. On the pure menorah, he will arrange the lights before Hashem always, and may Hashem Tamid. So we learn a number of things out from here, but just in terms of what the Bartender wants to emphasize for the moment, Va'alot ner tamid michutz parochat ha'idud yaroch oto lifnei Hashem. Amrat Torah kva ner lahadlik mimenu sh'ar nerot. The Torah is telling you to establish one light to light all the other lights from it. How do you see that from the pasuk? How does he know that it means you have to establish a single light to light all the other lights?
From the oto, that's a singular. It's only one. Oto, leharoch oto.
Yes. And what's the oto?
That's the Ner Ma'aravi.
So it just in Pshat, it refers back to the...
Because of Lifnei Hashem, because Lifnei Hashem is toward the west, and toward the west is the Kodesh HaKodashim. Sorry, it was not complete, my argument.
No, okay, I'm asking a slightly different question. You're correct to say oto is singular. And what I mean by the oto is, what does the oto refer to? It refers back to the end of the pasuk before, yeah. Right?
Ner tamid.
Alot ner tamid, to have a constant light burning. Yeah. So that then when it says yaroch oto, so we know that refers to the ner tamid. So there has to, so that indicate, what it indicates, all the Bartender is saying at this moment, that indicates to us that there has to be a light to light all the other lights from. Amrat Torah kva ner lahadlik mimenu shar nerot. Now, which one is it going to be? Ve'ezeh zeh Zener Sheni Shel Tzad Mizrach. It's going to be the second from the east. Hu Karui Ner Ma'aravi. That's the one that's called the Western Light. Diki Ayel Behecha Bahu Ner Pega Beresha. Ve'ein Ma'avirin Al Mitzvot. Because when he goes into the Heichal, he's going to come across that light first, and we don't pass over mitzvot. So what does he mean that that you come to that one first? Why not say it's the easternmost one?
It does say, I'm not sure about this, but it says michutz haparochet, so it'd be whichever one is mean closer to the parochet.
So there seems to be some indication michutz parochet, maybe that there's a relationship to the parochet. Okay, let's read through this again. Right? Umashim eitiv chamesh shel tzad ma'arav tchila, v'lo chamesh letzad mizrach, v'lesof shtayim shel ma'arav, v'hem umehem haya lo ladlik. Right? The idea that he's going to clean the 5 westernmost and not the 5 easternmost first. V'lo avid hach, he doesn't do that. Mishum dichtiv la'alot ner tamid, michutz parochet ha'edut, yarochoto lifnei Hashem. So first, Amratara Kvan Ner Lahadlik Mimenu Shar Neirot. So like we just said, this pasuk establishes for us that there's the notion of a Ner Tamid that has to be there to light the other lights from. Ve'ezeh, which one is it? Ze Ner Sheni Shel Tzad Mizrach. V'hu Karui Ner Ma'aravi. For reasons that we said, right? It's not the westernmost, but it's the one that's next to the easternmost. Diki ayel behecha bahalu ner paga bereisha ve'in ma'avirin al mitzvot. It feels like the Bartanur is leaving out a little bit of information here, but I think it's what Michael said. In other words, the very first one, we wouldn't think that's the one to light, because I wouldn't necessarily think that that's lifnei haparochet. But the second one, which is already closer, ein ma'avirin al mitzvot, I'm not going to pass over it because I can say this is the one that's closer to the parochet. The iklamemar b'hayi tukam hanes. We can also say that it's because that's the one that the nes took place with. Lukbal adlik mimenu. This seems to be a second reason. You can also say that the reason he leaves that one is to the reason he leaves that one is in order to emphasize the nes. So v'neri shon efshar tahaktiv lifnei Hashem. Right. So this is the part that you're saying. The first one you can't, because it says lifnei Hashem yoton ner shel tzad shchina shu letzad ma'arav ve'ein ner rishon karui lifnei Hashem. Right. So that's what Michael was saying, and the Bartanur does say, and that's the point. You don't do the first one, because the pasuk says lifnei Hashem, yarochoto lifnei Hashem. You have to keep that the ner tamid burning lifnei Hashem, and that it has to be a ner that's shel tzad shchina. It has to be on the side of the shchina, which will be the western side. Ve'ein ner rishon karu lifnei Hashem. The first one will not be called lifnei Hashem because it's the furthest from makom hashchina, as it were. So now, did we answer the question? The question was, why is it that we do we clean the 5 westernmost ones first and then do the eastern ones? Why don't we start with the eastern ones and then do the western ones? How did he answer the question?
we need to, there always needs to be the Ner Tamid. And for a number of reasons, it's that second one is the Ner Tamid. So we do the first, the Western five, the last five first, and there's always that Ner Tamid, and it's always that second one, the first of the Western ones.
Very good. In other words, so that's why he tells us about the Ner Tamid. He needs to explain this idea that there is a Ner Tamid, which we also call the Ner Ma'aravi, and that's something that you don't, that's going to be the last one that you're going to put out. You wouldn't start from there. So you can't start from the first five because you need the second one to be there burning. So you're going to start from the Western five. And then when you need to do the hatava of the other nerot, then you'll do the Eastern ones. Except that kol zman that there was a nes, you're not going to do the ner ma'aravi. And the ner ma'aravi, you're going to do that in the evening. Okay, so it's all a bit complicated, but there is, he's giving all of the reasons why it was done in this order. Very good. If he found that they had gone out, if he found that the two eastern ones, Hashtayim Mizrachiyot, Kagon Yachar Shemet Shimon HaTzadik, right? In the case that happened, it didn't happen all the time, but during the time of Shimon HaTzadik, the Ner Ma'aravi never went out. But after Shimon HaTzadik, sometimes it did go out. So if he came in and he found that the two eastern ones had both gone out, then midashnan umadlikan min adolkim. Then he's going to clean them out and light them from the ones that are lit. Lo shaya noten ptila chadasha v'shemen chadash k'derech hatavat hanerot. It doesn't mean here that he would put in a new wick and new oil the way he did the other nerot. Sharei la'olam ein mitivin shtei nerot mizrachiot ela la'achar shlitat atamid, because they never would clean out the two eastern ones until after the Korban Tamid had been shechted. K'dei lafsik ben hatabat chamesh latabat shtayim. Right? So in this instance where the two eastern ones have been, that he finds them put out, so he doesn't really do the full dishun for them, because the time to do the dishun for them is only going to be after he did the five Western ones, and then he waited for the Shchitat Tamid and the Zrikat Adam, and then he would do the Eastern ones. So what does it mean, Midashnan, Madlikan? Ela Midashnan, Hainu Shemesir Deshin Shibarosh Aptila Yeshana. Here the Dishun just means he removes the ash that's at the tip of the wick, Magbiya, and he'll lift up the wick, Umadlika, and relight it. I'm adding in the right? He lights it. Kedei liot nikar yafsek bein hatavat chamesh nerot l'shtayim, so that we can recognize well the difference between cleaning the five Western lights and the two Eastern lights. Be'im ein b'nerot dokim, and if none of the candles are lit, madlikan mimizbeach ha'olah, then he has to take fire from the outside mizbeach and bring that in, and then he could light. He would be able to light from that. Now, I just want to point out he seems to imply that no matter what, the two Eastern ones will be lit. He says, right, the Mishnah says, Midashnan umadlikan min adolkim. That if the two Eastern ones are out when he comes in, then he'll clean them, meaning he's going to clean the wicks and pull the wicks up, and then he'll light them from the other ones that are burning. If none of them are burning, he's going to bring fire from the outside, and it sounds like then he would light them both. Keep that in mind. Umedashen tashar, and then he cleans the other ones. Zu hatavat chamesh nirot, right? So what's the sha'ar? That's cleaning the 5 westernmost ones. Shenoten ptila chadasha b'shemen chadash. He gives them new wick and gives them new oil. Menichan kevuyot ad ha'erev sheba umadlik. He doesn't relight them. He leaves them ready to be lit for the evening. Umedashen dahacha eino k'mod midashen shel shnai mizrachiyot da'el. It's not the same way that he cleaned the 2 eastern ones earlier. U'yachar shchitat tamid uzrikat damo chozer umedashen hamizrachit v'noten shemen uvtila chadasha u'minicha ad ha'erev k'vuya. So here he says, after the shchita of the tamid and the sprinkling of the blood, then he goes back and he cleans out the 2 eastern ones. He also gives them new oil and a new wick, but he leaves them unlit from here on in until the evening. V'ner shniya shekruya ma'aravit kamo ken nidashen mesir shemen laptila הפתילה ישנה ונותן שמן חדש שמדליקה ממזבח העולה כדי להדליק ממנו בערב הנרות האחרות. Okay, so the easternmost one doesn't get relit, but the second one, the Ner Ma'aravi, after he cleans that one and gives it a new wick and puts in new oil, then that one he will light from the Mizbeach HaOlah, in order that he will be able to light the candles in the evening from the Ner Ma'aravi. Shener Ma'aravi hukba ladlik mimenu nerot acherot, like he said before, the western light, the Ner Ma'aravi, was determined to be the one to light from it the other candles. L'kach nami madlika imitza'at kavuya kodem shchitat tamid, and therefore you also light it if you found that it had gone out before the Korban Tamid was shechted. Kevan shetzarich mikoma kol madlika kisheba umeitiv v'yachar shlita, because nonetheless you're going to have to light it when you come and clean after shlita. Kach matzati perush Mishnah zu beperushei Rabbeinu Baruch Bar Yitzchak. This is how I found this Mishnah explained in the commentary of Rabbeinu Baruch Bar Yitzchak. V'hu hamechuvar shebechol haperushim. This is like the best. Mechuvar literally, comes from the word in Aramaic that means white. Like, in other words, it's the one that's like the clearest. It's the one that works the best from all of the explanations. And he says, "V'divrei haRambam b'Mishnah zu tzumuim ma'od." What the Rambam says in this Mishnah are just wondrous. The Gam Mashis, right? Like they're right. He doesn't understand them. Gam Mashis sover shatavata neirot hi hadmakatan, and that which he thinks that cleaning the neirot is the same as lighting them. V'shayu madlikina neirot shel menorah kulan baboker, that you would light the candles of the menorah, you would light all of them in the morning, kederech shemadlikin ba'er, the way that you light them in the evening. Kliya niskava be'einai. It's a mighty wonder. It's like I can't believe it in my eyes, right? V'lo shamati v'lo ra'iti la'achad me'rabotai shesover kein. I didn't hear and I didn't see any one of my teachers who holds like that. So what I want to do is I want to finish off this part of the Bartanura, and I want to look at the Rambam, and I'll tell you a couple of things about the Rambam. I think that'll be enough for tonight. Even Aitali Fnei HaMenorah, right? There was a stone in front of the menorah. Lefisha menorah gavoa shmama asar tefachim. The menorah was 18 tefachim high, which is pretty high. He had to go up to a high place so he could reach and be able to clean out the neirot. Uvash shalosh ma'alot, and it had 3 steps on it. Keneged shalosh ha'alot shektuvot b'menorah. It's in correspondence to the 3 times that the Torah uses the language of ha'alah in regard to the menorah. V'ha'alotcha et ha'neirot, v'ha'alat et neirotah, v'ha'alot ner tamid. V'yiniach hakuz v'yatsa, and he would leave the jar with the ash and go out. Ad lachar zrikat dam tamid, sha'az oseh tavat shtei neirot, v'hotzio. He would wait until after the blood was sprinkled from the korban tamid, because then he could go back and finish cleaning the other 2 neirot as he described, and then he could take out the kuz. V'chein chaveiro otzi et hateni, and that's when his friend who did the ketoret, he would also go with him to take out the teni that had the ash from the mizbeach haketoret. Ucheshotziu yishtachavu bigmar ha'avodah, v'lo achshav shadayin lo nigmar ha'avodah. When they would take it out, they would bow by at the finishing of their work, the commencement of at the end of their work, and not now. In other words, not until they can finish it. Shadayin lo nigmar ha'avodah, because they haven't yet finished it. Whew. Okay. So the Bartanura here explained a lot. According to the Bartanura, first of all, the menorah is going from east to west, meaning that it's parallel to the southern wall. That when he comes in, he's going to be cleaning the 5 westernmost lamps. He'll wait for the zrikat dam of the korban tamid, and then he'll finish and clean the 2 easternmost lamps, and he'll have them all set up and ready, but not relit, but they'll all be ready to be lit in the evening. That's the gadol. This is the shita of the Bartanura here. So let's look at the Rambam that I sent you. Okay, I brought you the Rambam's Girs in the Mishnah, but we'll just go straight into the Rambam. Kvar nitba'er bigmar Yoma. It's already been explained in the Gemara in Yoma, Shahatavat haneirot, that cleaning the lamps, v'hu nikui haneirot, v'havarat ma shenichba mehen, v'achlafat haptilot. So the Rambam says Hatavat haneirot means cleaning the neirot and lighting that which had gone out among them and exchanging the wicks. Lo haya l'shivat haneirot be'et echad. It wasn't for the all 7 lamps at once. El haseder hu shemetiv 5 neirot, v'char kach oseh avodah acheret, v'char kach chozer metiv 2 haneirot hanish'arot. So far, this part, right, of course, is also agreed upon by the Bartanura, that he's going to clean 5. He's going to do, he says, Oseh avodah acheret. We don't yet know what other avodah he's going to do, but then he'll come back and clean the two other ones. V'nechleku b'tam hadavar. And there was a machloket in the Gemara about the reason for this. Yesh mishamar lama metivin v'chozrin metivin. Why do we clean them, go back and clean them? Kedei lahargish kol ha'azara. To make the whole azara feel, right? To have like trembling emotion. Klomar laharchiv meshech zman otah ha'avodah kedei sheyehei laheker. That meaning that we want to draw out the time that it takes for this avodah of hatavat haneirot, so that it's recognized. V'yesha mishnatan tamadevar amro yitala. Right? There is somebody who gives there a reason that the pasuk says baboker beitivo atanerot chalkei l'shnei b'karim. Right. So that's the reason that the Bartanura brought. V'ani atzayer lecha kan po kan ofen seder shivat hanerot hayech hayu ben hatzafon l'darom. How they went from north to south, right? So the Rambam here holds by the other opinion, right? So there's a machoket in a braita in Masachet Menachot, which I promised Shira that we'll look at, but not today. And I think we're going to wait to see actually it's definitely something I want to do. I want to wait until we cover more. Because as I say, the lighting of the menorah in the evening is going to be in the 6th chapter of Tamid. And you'll see also there's a big discussion about all of these things there as well. I think we're going to wait until we get there, because along the way we're going to amass more pertinent information. But right, so for the moment, there, the Gemara there in Menachot, it's talking about the placement of the various kelim, of the aron, of the shulchan, of the mizbeach haktoret, and of the menorah. And there is an idea that, according to some opinions, that all of the kelim were went from east to west, except for the aron, which went from north to south. But then there's also an opinion that says that also the menorah went from north to south, right? So eventually we'll look at that and we'll hopefully understand that. For right now, we're just going to get sort of the nuts and bolts of how the Rambam explains this. Ve'echtov ot al kol ner kedei she'yafshar lermoz alav bekalut beit haperush. I'm going to put a letter next to each of them, next to each of the nerot, so that it'll be easy to refer to it in my commentary. Let's see if I didn't make it too big. All right, it's a little bit big. Okay, so this I copied this from Rav Kafach's edition of the Rambam, and this is from the Rambam's manuscript, right, from his auto manuscript. So here, Ma'arav, Mizrach, right? So this is west, this is east, this side, so this side here is going to be north, and this side will be south. This is, okay, north. Then we have Bet Gimel, the middle is Dalid, Hey Vav Zayin, and the Rambam is already here. He says that Dalid is Ner Ma'aravi, and you'll notice the way the lights are pointed, right? They are the 3 on the right and the 3 on the left are all pointing to the middle Ner, and the middle Ner is pointing west. The tips of all of the lights are pointed toward the middle one after the other, right? One pointing to the back of the one in front of it, just like you see in the picture. Vaner hakatuv alav dalid, the one that's marked Dalid, hu ner ma'aravi asher lo kaba meshat zman mesuyam, asher lo kaba meshat zman mesuyam kafi sheyadua, right? It didn't go out for some time, as was known. V'hu ha'emtza'i, and it's the middle one. The nikra ma'aravi mibnei shepiv l'tzad ma'arav. It's called the ner ma'aravi because its mouth is pointing toward the west. So one advantage we can say to this perush is that the term ner ma'aravi seems to match up more clearly with the reality of this ner ma'aravi. According to the perush, the way the Bartanur brings it down. The Ner Ma'aravi is not so Western, right? It just happens to be a little more Western than the easternmost one. But this one, all of them have the same proximity to the West, but the Ner Ma'aravi, it's peh, right? So it means like the wick is going to be pointed toward the West. So this is what the Torah itself alluded to when it said El Mul Pnei Hamnorah. Klomar, Shiyu Pia. What does it mean? El Mul Pnei Hamnorah Ya'iru Shivata Nerot. It means to say that the mouths, that the tips of all of the Nerot are going to be pointed toward this middle one, which itself is pointed toward the west. Amar ki ka'asher hu nichnas lehetiv hanerot. So it says, in other words, our Mishnah, now he's going to actually explain the words of the Mishnah. Ki ka'asher hu nichnas lehetiv hanerot, when he came in to clean the nerot, imatza shnei hanerot shekatuv aleihem zayin vav. So according to this, if he walked in, now remember, he's walking in, this is Mizrach, this is Marav. I'm going to, where I highlighted the numbers, he's basically walking in here, right? He's going to come in from here, and he's going to find the menorah to his left, but it's going to be, instead of against the southern wall, it's going to be against, or near, or at least parallel to the eastern wall. So he's going to come in, and according to the Rambam, the two that he's going to look at first, if he finds these two, that they're lit, he's going to leave them because they're lit. He'll do the other five, he'll do other work, whatever other work he's going to do. Then he'll go back and do the other two nerot, shehiniach, that he left. In other words, Vav and Zayin. If he found that Vav and Zayin had gone out, right? So if these two have gone out, he doesn't do anything to them. He's going to do the hatava for the Aleph Beit Gimel Dalet Hey. Until he does the work that he's going to do, whatever other work he's going to do in the interim, and then he'll go back and he will clean Vav and Zayin. This is what it means. Afterwards, he'll clean the other ones. In other words, after he did the five and did whatever other avodah he was going to do, and comes back, then he's going to do the rest. The rest is going to be Vav and Zayin. We already explained in the third chapter of Menachot that the menorah is 18 tefachim high. It's about the same height as a person. So that's why he has to raise himself up from the ground. And then he can fix the nerot and light them as was mentioned. So that's the Rambam. The Rambam says basically the same psak in the Mishnah Torah. But I'll just, before we finish, I'll just tell you in Kafach's edition, I've explained in the past, Kafach's edition was based mostly on the Rambam's autograph manuscript. And he could see how the Rambam changed it over time. The Rambam kept working on it throughout his life. And what he says about this Mishnah, if you want, I'll send you a copy of what he says. But in his notes, he says as follows. The Madura Kama, in the first edition of the Rambam's, in other words, in his first original manuscript of the Perush of Mishnah, which he's going to call that the Madura Kama. It's like the first edition. What the Rambam did in his lifetime, he would go through and he would like cross out things and then write new things. So Kava says in the see the things that he crossed out. So he says in the original Perush, he went the other way, and he said Be'em ha'ma'arav ha'mizrach. He said that the menorah went from west to east, v'chein b'nidfas, and that's also the way it is in the printed editions, right? The printed Rambam is you find in printed in the standard Shas. The Tukan Kilatonenu was fixed as we see in front of us. And that's how he changed the language throughout the rest of his Perush. Because in the first go through, in his first edition, he held like Rebbe. The Rebbe held that the menorah went from east to west. Later on, he changed his mind, and he held that it went from north to south. Right? That's the sugya where there's this machloket. That's also a paskin in the Mishnah Torah. Gambit siyur hayu haneirot munachin ben mizrach le'ma'arav piotehem klapei marav. Also, in the original illustration that he made, the lamps were going from east to west and not from north to south, like I showed you. And their mouths, right, the tips of the lamps were pointed westward. The Kfishu Vada Kaman, Perek Vav Mishnah Aleph, right? So in Perek Vav Mishnah Aleph, again, like I said, we're going to revisit this. And actually, the Rambam's picture there, I'll hold it up so you can see it. I didn't copy it for you yet, right? He has it going in the other direction. He has it going from east to west and not from north to south. He writes at the top Ma'arav and in the bottom Mizrach, so it's going from east to west and not going from north to south. Just a second. Muchakan Rabbeinu v'tiken kilfanenu, right? So the Rambam erased those things, or he crossed them out, and he fixed it as we see in front of us. And then he brings from another Ktav Yad, another manuscript, and there was another manuscript that went entirely like the first Madura, and in another manuscript, Tukan Omnam Hanusach Achosif Tzir Madura Achona L'Tzad Hatzir Kodem. Okay, we don't have to get more into the weeds about that, but even the Rambam wasn't 100% sure. So the I shouldn't say that. In the end, he paskined that it goes from north to south and not from east to west, but he did change his mind. So one of the things I want to leave you with to ponder, you don't have to say something about this now, but it's a question that we should bear in mind, and I think I've mentioned it before, as we're learning all these things. What's so interesting is we have the possibility, right, of two different placements for the menorah. So you can ask, okay, but what happened? Like, what was the reality? What was the historical reality? Like, how did it look in the Beit HaMikdash in the, at that time. Why do we have why is there a machloket? Why don't you just get people who could bear testimony about what they saw? The machloket that's brought in the Gemara in Menachot, right, is Rebbe. Rebbe never saw the Beit HaMikdash. So he was basing himself on a tradition. And the Rabbanan who argue with him presumably also basing themselves on a tradition. But what does it mean that you have different traditions about what happened in the Beit HaMikdash? What does that mean? Like, how do you understand that? The other thing that I started to allude to at the beginning of the shiur about the order of the way the avodot were done every day in the Beit HaMikdash. We'll look at this more closely, but if you look even at the Mishnayot that we've done already, you'll see that yesh stiyot, they don't always go exact. There are different versions about the exact order of different things. In the order that's brought in the Sidur, right? It says Seder Hamaracha Mishmat Gemara the Abba Shaul, right? That's what's in the Sidur. Abaye would arrange the order that was done, in other words, the Maracha, meaning like what was done in the order of the Avodah, the Beit HaMikdash, Mishmat Gemara, in the name of the learned tradition. Gemara there means like the learned tradition. And according to Abba Shaul. Why does it say according to Abba Shaul? Because that's the sugya, Masechet Yoma. There's a machloket between Abba Shaul and another one of the Tanaim about specific orders. In fact, we're going to come across in the beginning of Perek Daled, we're already going to touch on one of the things that ends up being a machloket. So again, the question, what does that mean? What does that tell us spiritually, conceptually, that there's more than one possible reality about something that actually happened? It's something to, you understand what I'm asking? It's something to consider, right? So one thing you can say is, okay, the Mishnah, in the end, it is this collection of oral traditions, and maybe some of the traditions, weren't absolute, and this is the reality for a lot of halacha. There were lots of different traditions where they're machloket. But what seems to make this one distinct is that we know that it must have been done in a particular way, as opposed to certain other machlokot lahalacha, where even if it was done in a particular way, but I could still come later on and make an argument against it. About, I don't know, in Hilchot Shabbat or whatever it might be. I might have a different idea. Like there's, I don't know, I can think of lots of different things, like also like in Hilchot Stam, there's a difference of opinion about, there are lots of machlakot that you could argue they thought one thing at one time, and then for different reasons, based on drashot, they changed their mind. You could say the same thing about the Beit HaMikdash, but I don't know. In my own mind, it seems there's something more going on here. That it's pointing whether or not there was a particular reality that always stood in the Beit HaMikdash, that was always followed in the Beit HaMikdash. It still points you to this idea that there's more than one possible reality, and that all possible realities have significance and have meaning. But more than that, I can't say. But if anybody wants to say something about it now, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll leave it for another time. But if anybody wants to give their impression of that question, the floor is open.
Perhaps about the direction. So how to put together the direction of the temple, east and west and north and south. And so we cannot separate one vessel or what, and because the question of how is the position, how is the relationship from one vessel of the Shulchan and the testimony and the Am Yisrael and the Ezra and those. So it's meaningful to be aware what is the perhaps what is the the primordial or the most important direction, what is most and what is connected to, if we started with west, and what is about the other direction. So we have east-west and north-south, not by chance to emphasize starting with north or starting with west. So we have, yeah, that's my chart. It's okay. Perhaps the direction of for direction of the Malchut, of being on earth, and what of presence of God is so meaningful. So we must be very carefully what comes first and what is related to the first. And so we have many options. So we have two important options, east and west and north and south. And okay, to emphasize perhaps the western and the east, and then secondary the north and the south. It's another option than to decide, okay, I'm starting with south, with the light. So I want to, okay, so the main theme is about the connection about westward and direction in a more than concrete sense, more than material, physical sense. That seems to me is one of the key.
One of the elements. But it's also interesting because it's also true that the machloket is only whether it goes north, south, or east or west. Nobody has an idea that it might go in a diagonal of one way or another. Or, in other words, it's not arbitrary. The direction is not arbitrary, neither according to Rebbe nor to the Chachamim. It's not arbitrary. It has to, and it's square. Either it's going to go north, south, or east, west. You don't get to move it around in other degrees. So that's also quite interesting. And like I say, there is a relationship between that and the direction of the other kelim. Also, the whole idea that the Beit HaMikdash itself, even though it's not a square, but it's squared, right? It's built in rectangles. And the whole idea of the way Rishuyot work are based on the idea of four sides, including the Sukkah, including the Beit HaMikdash. Even if, like in the Sukkah, even if you don't need all four physical sides, but we conceptualize four sides, and right. So we're working within particular types of dimensions. There's square dimensions and perpendicular and parallel and perpendicular angles. So I don't know. We'll think about it. And by the way, if anybody wants, Shira sent me this. You took it off the internet, but it's a very lengthy perush of Rav Hirsch about the symbolism of the menorah. And maybe not right now, but as we go through more of the information, get more information about the menorah and the halachot of the menorah, you can see how Rav Hirsch does this wonder. There are other perushim also that do that. He does a wonderful job of putting together all of these halachot to give, to show you what the conceptual meaning, or the way he sees the conceptual meaning of the menorah, the way the menorah is built, how it's situated, how the lights are situated, and all of that. It's quite interesting. Michael,
I'm wondering. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
Go ahead.
So in a way, this reminds me of a story about a debate between Einstein and Niels Bohr, where Niels Bohr was one of the great innovators of quantum mechanics. And Einstein really did not like quantum mechanics. And so, so Einstein kept saying to Niels Bohr, God does not roll dice. God does not roll dice. And then Niels Bohr finally answered him, stop telling God what to do. And so what we have here are, we don't have infinite possibilities. What we have are quanta, as it were. And we can even push the. I mean, we know that the creation. I mean, the building of the Mishkan, you recapitulated the creation of the world. that when we're talking about when we're talking about when we're talking about the Beit HaMikdash, we're not just talking about an architectural order, but we're also in some sense talking about a cosmic order. And a cosmic order in which there are multiple possibilities, but not infinite possibilities. There is a kind of structure that there's a kind of fracture pattern, as it were, like as with a crystal. I mean, there are certain quanta can go this way or that way, but it can't go any way.
There is a difference between the debate between Einstein and Bohr. Because this debate has got to do with the interpretation of the world as it is nowadays, and all the time. It's an interpretation of the reality. And here we have something else, which is the interpretation of the reality which was in the past. And that is always a difficulty, because in the end, we are not in the past, we are now. And whatever we do about, whatever reconstruction we do about the past is always a matter of interpretation. We never can really reconstruct the reality as it was in the past, because we don't have, this reality has not been completely recorded.
Except that when we're talking about, once we're going to the realm of quantum mechanics, also something that is outside our immediate experience. Like our perception actually, we cannot separate the thing and our perception of the thing. Our perception of the thing, in some sense, changes the thing. So in some sense, when we're talking about something like quantum mechanics, in some sense, it is like the past. It's something that actually, I started talking with my hands here, and then I realized, wait a second, I've got my video off.
Oh, okay. Yes, we don't see your hands.
Yes.
We don't see your hands. But the other thing I'll say, I'll just interject, right? Paul, you're correct. If we think of time as something linear, but if time isn't something linear, then maybe everything's happening now.
No, the Bible considers time to be linear.
No, it doesn't.
And anyway, there is an. There's a development from starting at the creation of the world, and it goes through the families, and then through you have Egypt and
although
Mitzrayim and so on.
I'm sorry, I'm being rude, but Rashi suggests, of course, when Rashi says there's no before, there's no after. I mean, he's suggesting. I mean,
what Rashi are you referring to?
No
Michael, what are you referring to?
That's an interpretation. There is no before, no after in the interpretation of the past, but it doesn't say something of the past itself. You are allowed, when you do interpret the past, according to Rashi, to do connections between various times in the past, because this is the way you consider the past. You are free to do all kinds of connections, but these are still interpretations you do nowadays.
So, I mean, so I'm referring to the Rashi. I mean, there are various Rashis where Rashi says, okay, what is being described here is not being described in linear chronological order.
So that's okay. Chazal say ein muktam u'muchar b'Torah, and Rashi understood that in a particular way. And there's a machloket rishonim about what that means in the context of parshanut. But I'm not sure that means. I would not immediately suspect that the idea of ein muktam u'muchar b'Torah is telling me something about the nature of time. It's telling me something about the way I should understand the Torah. Now, all of these things are, I want to say, all of these things are very interesting, and this is exactly the kind of discussion that I'm encouraging. I don't want to go on so much now because I'm tired and I need to go to bed. But I will say, I think to Paul's point, I'll say this: we experience time as being linear. That's part of the human condition. Our experience of time is that time is linear. However, when we're learning Torah, we are, I would say, even obliged to try to understand different realities, even contradictory realities, simultaneously, right? That's this idea, right, that the Gemara says, Echad posel, v'echad machshir, v'echad mitameh, v'echad mitaher, right? It's all divrei Elokim chayim. So the machloket between Rebbe and the Chachamim about the direction of the menorah, it's all Torah. So what's important for us is we're not learning Torah, we're not learning Torah shebichtav, Torah sheba'al peh, in order to try to reconstruct an historical reality. That's not the purpose of what we're doing. We're learning it because of its relevance to us right now. I'm just pointing out that there's something interesting going on, that you do have machlakot about realities after the fact, but we also have certain machlakot about realities even during the fact, as we will see. We'll see that there's a machloket in the beginning of the next chapter about exactly how the Zrikat Adam was done, and that there was a machloket even by people who actually saw the Beit HaMikdash. So I think it goes also to another point that Paul said, like, the reality is that our perceptions as human beings are limited. I have a lot to say about this, so don't get me started. One of the things that we do when we're learning Torah is we're trying to get all the different perceptions and bring them together. And to Michael Werner's point, it doesn't mean that there are infinite realities, right? There are certainly, the Torah is going to allow for certain realities. We say in a Nagadic sense, Shivim Panim Torah, right? There's 70 facets to the Torah. Whether there's more or less, and we're not counting all of them, but it means that there are many different aspects that we should be taking into account as we go through. So I think that's it for this evening, at least from my point of view. So I didn't sleep very well last night, so I'm going to try to go to bed soon. Thank you all, and Bezrat Hashem, see you next week.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.